Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the video about Bridgerton and the graceful decline of iniquity. So this is a video where I will be focusing on um the show, but also talking about a lot of other topics around this retro, not retro, this feudal era, 1800s era, um, 1800s period drama, obviously set in the alternate history of England, right in the tumultuous era. Well, it's not quite as not well, arguably more difficult. It was a little more difficult in the mid 1800s in the Victorian era, in the Edwardian era, or more technological upheavals maybe. But obviously it'd be worse for people who are not inside of England at that time, as I was talking about last week. But it's a show that does. It's a show that like it reminds me of Game of Thrones. That's one of the shows that inspired Neofeud back in the early 20 teens, and it has a lot of intrigue. It has a lot of the pomp and the circumstance. Um, it's a show that has a lot of um, it's a show that has a lot of character machinations. Obviously, it's created by the lady who made Grey's Anatomy. So Shonda Land, I think is her name. I'm not super familiar with all this because I don't watch a lot of these. I mean, I watched all of Game of Thrones with Holly back in the teens, and that was a it was a that was a big part of the inspiration behind Neofeud. That's why it's called Neofeud, Neo-feudalism, which has many meanings, obviously, depending on how you look at it. Um, and Neofeud itself is it is a alteration. I kind of subtitled this the retailoring and the retailoring of the past to redress the future. And so like it Bridgerton also, of course, like makes alterations, obviously, to what we accept and what is commonly understood as the past. In the obviously, like one of the most striking things, probably, if you don't know very much about the shows, you just immediately see, oh, there is a black queen of England. Obviously, this alludes to the near future arrival of Meghan Markle as the first real world Black Queen of England. Any second now, right? No. Um. Uh, Sorry, I'm just gonna get my chat here. Yeah, so it's a show that, but it's a show that does like kind of like bring up a lot of questions. Obviously, it's gonna upset a lot of people. Um, but they're probably not gonna be watching this show anyway. It's funny because Holly actually said like I'm a little bit embarrassed to have you watch this show. Have us supposed to watch this show? Um, like I mean, it's a show that's like obviously like geared towards more femme people. Um, it's Holly actually compared it to Twilight, the vampire books, the vampire romance books. But it's better written than Twilight. Um, I had to stop. I tried to just for research purposes read some Twilight, and I had to put that down. It's giving me aneurysms and nosebleeds. Not in a good way. um, but the Bridgerton's it does like play with the history in a way that like I mean, it's more common with shows and movies that are made nowadays. Um, Obviously, to the chagrin and great, the deep, the deep vengeful anger of certain historically overrepresented people, maybe. So I'm kind of like beating around the bush, obviously, but I mean, there was that recent Lord of the Rings of Power show that really had a lot of people feeling a lot of feelings last year. Now, of course, like some of these is a very squeaky, rusty wheel very vocal minority. But there is also a like there are some very very loud and abrasive, people that we all know who scream about the wokeness, etc. But then there's a not as loud, but there's a disquieted discomfort experiencing greater mass of the population, like under like it's simultaneously, oh, these are just this weird vocal minority, but they are the white ice, above the surface, but under there's actually a deeper systemic structure, and there are many people who are not, they're not going to come out and like make a lot of noise on the internet, but they are not happy either, or they're feeling weird about it. And it's usually older people, but not all of them. I think there's also some of the younger people that are unsure about what their future holds, and like, obviously I'm kind of talking in circles about, I'm talking around because I'm trying to not get this video shadow banned and deranked and such by our gracious king, our most benevolent monarch, the mega corporation that is Google. We genuflect and praise our great algorithm, our divinely mandated algorithm. But anyways, so Bridgerton, so Bridgerton, I'm not gonna talk too much about like the specific intrigues within the show, because you can just watch the show, and I don't want to spoil it too much. It is a super popular show, I will say that. Let's see. I wonder what the reviews are saying right now. Bridgerton season 3. Well, let's not look at that. The show's biggest weakness. So I'm just like looking up like some of the recent discussions about this. The actors playing. I haven't watched all the seasons, so I don't know that. I have not watched through every single season. I watched like one episode of the first Bridgerton season, and then jumped into like season 3. Yeah. So but it's a show. It's like Game of Thrones in the sense that it revolves around people and the personalities, and the machinations and the political intrigues and the backstabbing and the backstabbing and the courtly drama. It's all about the princesses and the princes and the lords and the ladies and the upper crust, obviously. I mean but the thing is, like, that's actually a lot of the history of storytelling, certainly in Europe and the West and place. Obviously, like, you can't really have specifically those kind of dramas in the modern settings, but in a lot of ways they follow that. Like the workplace. I guess workplace dramas are a little bit different. But they kind of follow the patterns of the courtroom dramas. There was also Japanese courtroom dramas. Tale of Genji is actually a 1,000-year-old Heian court drama that I actually had to read that when I was in freshman year of college. And it was like the Japanese component. It was this pop cultural class taught at the Evergreen. It was the most left U.S. college. Speaking of current events, they were anti-war in like the day after 9/11. So it was a weird college, but they had us read their college classes where you take one class that is a combined history, English, math, all as one one program. It was an unusual college. Like Reed and Berkeley are a little bit like that, I think. But anyways, so we had to read The Tale of Genji, Picaro, Don Quixote. That was the Spanish, and then we had to read Shakespeare like all together to like get this sense. And Shakespeare also, that's what a lot of Shakespeare's work is covering, the drama of courts and the drama of royalty and the elites, as you must under such a system. But and like and so I find it kind of interesting. I remember like watching Game of Thrones, and then I was watching Game of Thrones, and then like playing Shadowrun or Blade Runner or Neuromancer, reading Neuromancer, right? And then watching Game of Thrones, and I was like, that was a lot of the impetus behind Neofeud. And it's kind of like how those could be, because Neofeud is a game but it has like a lot of the imagery, and it kind of fuses the courtroom drama and the courtroom intrigue, or I try my best to, with the modern cyberpunk setting with flying cars and mega neon filled cities and high tech low life and just neoliberalism turned up to 11, all that kind of stuff, robots, cyborg, AI, everything, with a lot of comedic twists, but then also like it's not all of Neofeud, but a good portion of it revolves around the drama of the court, right? And some of it is just like looking at cool, I had a fun time like drawing portraits of rich, powerful people, and also not rich and not powerful people, and just like making cool embellished palaces and stuff. It's just kind of, or then like trying to like, what would a palace look like in like 2030 something? What would a 2030 something feudal palace look like? What if there's Game of Thrones, right? But if like the common folk and the flea bottom of Game of Thrones, those are like the very poor, the paupers and the everyone dying of the Black Plague, the toiling, unmentioned in history serfs that are the majority of people, right? Where would they live if it was 2030s, like the former United States of America that's now a collapsed balkanized wasteland? Where would the serfs live? And I was like, oh, it'd be something like a favela shadow city, right? So that was like, Neofeud was like painting, that was a lot of I was just like making these images in the beginning, and then I started writing stories around that. Was part of the game. It had an interesting the way I created Neofeud is a weird organic evolution, but the part of it is that like the courtroom drama. It's just like, it's really human drama, but there's so many stakes. There's such a high stakes, and there is when it's a courtroom, when it's the kings and queens and lords and ladies, right? There's a lot of shows that set in that time. There's all the resources and all of the money and all of the all the labor can go into making a single dress. So it makes like if you like art and you like intricacy and you like and there's also has the relationships angle to it, and like obviously definitely too much of that era is like wrapped up in I was telling Holly, like, watching Bridgerton, it's like Bridgerton, I will never ever date again, or why Bridgerton, why dating is the most horrific experience that one will never wish upon one's worst enemy, because it's like everything is wrapped up in like who you will mate with, right? Who, if you're a woman, right? There's just like obviously who a lot of the show is targeting. It's like your entire life in this world is culmination in this single event, right? Where you have to be raised and bred and trained and to be the perfect wife for your husband, that will have the title, that will be passed up, that will give you the capacity to exist at all in the world in some kind of prestigious way as a as a noble, right, under that system, so it's just like it's a ridiculously it's just ridiculous, right? It's kind of like um all of my life, if I don't come in front of the queen, debut properly, and impress some random man in this court, and then like if I don't dance good, talk, if I don't have high riz and like talk good and look good for this man, and that's all like I'm worth, right? And I don't marry the right, most powerful and entitled wealthy man in this court, my life is over. And after that, if you it's like, because part of the Bridgerton show, right, is like in season 3, right, is Nicola Coughlan, right, who is a Irish. Also, I'm happy to talk about his show because not just because it has a black showrunner, but also because free Palestine supporters are like key characters and also writers. It's Nicola Coughlan. Oh, she's just a central. She's the main star of this season. She's also in Dairy Girls, which is also very interesting, and talks about the troubles in Ireland. She is Irish herself, so and she is also Irish in the Claire Daly fashion, So anyways, so we're happy for political reasons to be able to wear the Bridgerton on our badge for that reason, because not many other shows, actors, writers, and directors, not that many other big shows are coming out and saying anything about the FREEPALESTINE. I can't even say it without this channel being banned. It's amazing. Every time I say something about GENOCIDE, my stream gets cut off like halfway through the stream, like literally for like the last 2/3 of the last months of streams. I gotta cut my videos in half because of that. So anyways, so shout out to Nicola Coughlan for doing that. But anyway, so in this show, like her entire life, right, her entire existence, right, like her main struggle in season 3 is she is going to be winding up a sad, lonely, disgraced, tarnished spinster, right? It's like the worst thing possible. The worst thing possible is you don't find a man to marry. I mean, it's like the worst thing possible is you don't look good. You don't like make yourself pretty enough for some guy, some noble, noble, hereditarily aristocratic, which is to say, and this comes up in the show. There's this club owner, right? Club owner in Bridgerton, right? He was a boxer, and then Will the boxer, his family's survived on his fights, right? This guy, and then in season 3 he I have not kept up on all the lore of this entire world, so you will forgive me for that. But he's now come into the upper crust. He has elevated his status. He went from a boxer to a club owner. I think he bought that with some of it with his winnings. He owned like a gentleman's club. Also, this is in Arcadum, the video game I've been playing a lot. So obviously, I've been thinking a lot about the steampunk era in 1800s. I made a video about that last time in the 1800s super advanced Hawaii, socialist steampunk, solar punk Hawaii. You can watch that video at your leisure. But anyways, so this club owner is he went from boxer to club owner, gentleman's club owner in the city of London. He was not a noble, right? Obviously. And then he's like elevated his status. Again, it's through familial, it's through relationship, basically. It's nothing to do with, merit. It's nothing to do with how hard you work. It's nothing to do with how how good you are at, running clubs or boxing. It's something to do with your scientific abilities that win you prestige and clout and accolades and move society forward, right? Like I was talking about with the again, since I brought it up, I'll briefly refer back to that. Uh, you know, shoot, sorry. This is this part of the stream where Silver Spook has way too many tabs and goes too deep in tangents to remember what Silver Spook was doing, and then begins speaking exclusively in the third person, in order to delay the inevitable truth that I cannot. Here it is. Okay, so I made a video last time about the steampunk and solarpunk suppression and saboteurs of a world that had advanced science, technology, right? Had very well dressed, dapper, we had very Bridgerton looking characters, right? But like Bridgerton is like again, there were no black and brown non-white European feudal rulers, in the certainly not at the scale that you see in Bridgerton, right? And if there is, they're not remembered, right? There basically wasn't. There was basically they were not allowed. It was a hereditary, British dynasty, and they wanted to keep the power under colonialism that operated under a, various conceptions of the Caucasoid penultimate. The apotheosis of the human species was, of course, the Caucasoid, which had to be worshipped, and to interbreed was like anathema to the European colonial feudal capitalist system, right? So Bridgerton is not. It's not. It's an alternate past, right? I think, and part of this, and again, Holly knows way more about this, but part of the retailerings of the past is that there is a previous monarch, had married into or had decided to make changes, right? They said, well, we were not going to have exclusively white British monarchs. We're not going to only, right? We're gonna that's part of this subtitle here, the graceful decline of iniquity. We are going to gracefully, artfully, gently, slowly, and then maybe a little faster, right, reduce the inequality in terms of the caramel or chocolate skin hue, right, in terms of the nation of origin. Right, so there are changes. This is not the Britain. There was no black queen. There was no African queen. There's no Asian queen of Britain. Right. So this is a alteration of the past, and it's not like a historical piece that is going for 100% historical accuracy. It's actually interesting discussion to be had there. There is a discussion there, right? Is it better to show history, right, like exactly as it was, or as historically accurate as you can get it? And like, what even does historically accurate mean, right? When you have many historical accuracies in ostensibly historical accurate publications, especially in the West, for reasons that I will not go into right now, but the history is a battleground. History, like the Bridgerton ton, like the social season, history is a battleground. It is a war. It is a war of words and looks and bows and very expert piano playing, and who can be into birds and preserving the natural world more, right? That's actually a war that happens in this show. It's a battle between the two eligible bacheloresses who are like fighting over. There's this one of the prestigious suitors, right? One of the lords that is looking to court his future wife, who will then be entitled, blah, etc. He's really into, like, he's like the 1800s, the 1800s aristocratic vegan man, you know. He's like the vegan guy. He's like the vegan boss in Scott Pilgrim, right? But like a bit taller and longer coattails, better, more expensively dressed Scott Pilgrim vegan boss. Anyway, so but that is there's a struggle there, right? It's a space where, and also, the history itself is a fight. It's a fight over what is the past, the way that we remember the past. Right, history is like the film projected into the minds, through the minds of the present, onto the screen of the future. And the history, or another way to put that, right? Who controls the past controls the future now. Thus spoketh, His Majesty, the King of Rage Revolutionary Rock, the King of Radical Rock, Zach De La Roca. So who controls the past controls the future, or what controls the past? What we think of the past, right, alters the future, right? It alters the present and then the future, right? But obviously, some people, there is obviously arguments to be made that, like, if you distort the past, like, making the past seem better is not going to result in a positive future, right? Because some people will say, well, that absolves, or that people don't learn how horrible things were in that time, right? And like, I can see where that's going. At the same time, like, that is, I think that most audiences that will watch a show like Bridgerton, like, probably already know that this is not real. This is not what actually happened in the 1800s in Britain. It's pretty clear. I mean, it's like, I think that's pretty clear anyway, right? And the show is not like aimed at, it is not it's not a mass audience, but it's like, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of dialogue. You have to already be fairly educated to try to watch this show. It's like Game of Thrones, It's like HBO prestige TV. Like, it is a relationship show, right? But there's a lot of thinking and listening involved, right? And there's people who don't like the talky shows, right? This is not going to be something for you. It's like a comic book movie is more mass appeal, I would say. That's more like, that's everybody and their kids and their moms and dads and their cousins and their nieces, and that's a everybody show, right? But Bridgerton is more, it's not for people who will, like, misinterpret this as to say, oh, well, there was no European colonialism and racism. I don't think anybody's gonna take that away from the show. If they do, that'll be a bit odd. So anyways, but yeah, so when we come back to the point that I kind of jumped off of. So, but in 1800s, like I was saying last week, right? It's kind of why I'm dovetailing off the steampunk theme from last week into this one. There was a place where you had, advanced science and technology and engineering and mathematics, without inequality, and that was in 1800s Hawaii. Before the U.S. overthrew the universal healthcare, having, hydroelectric, nationalized, near free, socialized hydroelectric power that lit an entire city with the brand new lamps and lanterns that had recently been invented. Thomas Edison, in fact, Kalakaua was the first head of state of Hawaii to circumnavigate the globe, spoke directly to Thomas Edison to work on this new invention, the new electrical filaments, right? That could excite the the particles, they didn't quite understand atoms and electrons and hydrons at the time, electrons and neutrons and protons at this time. But they recently had discovered that passing electrical currents through specific kinds of gases and specific wires in specific configurations could cause, illumination. Right, that was new. It was like brand new, and nobody had actually done that at a large scale. So Hawaii was the first city. Hawaii wasn't the first place ever to have electricity, but 1800s Hawaii was the first place to have a vast 800 plus lamps, and the Capitol also was all illuminated by electricity. The White House, just as an example, the United States White House in the mid 1800s was lit by candles. Right, it was still candles, maybe some oil lamps, like whale oil lamps, torches and that kind of thing. Hawaii already had electrical lighting, right? And we also had electric lighting. We had submarines and torpedo-proof vessels invented by our leaders. We had the highest literacy rate in the world. We had universal healthcare, like I already said. We had an actually non-racist society where Black, Asian, people of all colors, like Hawaii's court, like looked like actual Bridgerton court, like in the revisionist Bridgerton court with Asians, Black, Hispanic, Indian people in the court. Like Hawaii had a court, a real one that looked like that, and the Hawaiian country. And even better than that, it wasn't just the Hawaiian court that everything was based upon your hereditary aristocracy of unjust, not a very just and not a very good, not a very equitable system, right? Monetarily, in terms of familial dynastic inequity, it was not very good. In terms of racial inequity, of course, not very good. And in terms of financial inequity, is very terrible. But in Hawaii, it was actually the opposite, right? And it's a very complex story that I can tell and I frequently retell. But let's like the last. And you might, some people say, "Oh, sir, I thought you just said this." There's Queen Emma, and these are kings and queens. The Hawaiian kings and queens were kings and queens in name, but in fact, they were that was part of the attempt to mask and to stop the colonization of Hawaii by the British, right? It was actually in the same time Bridgerton is happening. Hawaii is pretending to be a European dynastic, white only, economically capitalist society, like the industrialists under Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities, the Oliver Twists below, and the kings and the queens and the factory owners above. But Hawaii actually had a different system, but they had to call it kings and queens. They had to call the leaders kings and queens, otherwise the British would not have allowed Hawaii to exist. That was actually the rub. And in fact, the Queen Emma of Hawaii, or Queen Emma, she was actually elected, right? She actually ran. She ran against. This is how the British, if the Hawaiians tried not to explain it, right? Because if you ever told, if Kalakaua or Emma ever, or Liliuokalani ever told, the Queen of England, who was not elected, right, that the Hawaiians actually had elections, and that the Hawaiian kings and queens spoke regularly and conversed like friends with the commoners, that was not acceptable, right? So in that sense, the Bridgerton world, even with the racial revisions, where you have a black, or partially black and part Asian. I'm not sure. It's like she looks like she's like could be part black and part like South Asian or East Asian. I'm not 100% sure. But not white, right? So having a black queen, having brown and black lords and ladies in the British nobility, right? That is different. That is a graceful decline of the inequity on a racial level. But even in Bridgerton, it's still a world in which everything is decided by your birth, right? Nothing to do with your merit, nothing to do with human needs being met because, like a socialist or communist analysis, human needs are met because humans deserve those needs, right? People are there's still the political and economic and familial dynastic inequality. It's just minus the races, minus the well, racism is not fully gone, right? But less racism, right? But in all the other, like in all the other domains, it's still a vastly unequal society. Whereas Hawaii actually had racial equality, and the dynastic system, it was not perfect, and everything was not completely, it was not a completely equal. There's no perfect society, but the differences between the leaders in Hawaii and the commoners, it was Ali'i and then the Makainana. Those are the Hawaiian words. They're closer. It's closer to steward, and the masses are the worker owners. So it's actually more democratic. So the Hawaii had something more like citizens / worker owners of the cooperatives, right? Which is more democratized than even current day Western society, which speaks of itself as free, democratic, respecting human rights. So the Hawaiian system but Hawaiians had to dress up to look like the European, the European nobility, or the Europeans would say that we were uncivilized, because to be civilized meant to be hereditary aristocracy, colonialist, have an empire. It's like, right, it's ridiculous, right? Those are really not good, though. I mean, you have cool gowns and stuff, but the social and economic structure is not. It's not. I mean, later on, the Europeans and Americans now claim that, oh well, we're really civilized because we have democracies, right? As opposed to hereditary aristocracies. Why are all the descendants of lords and ladies, descendants of lords and ladies, and they're disproportionately white, the billionaire capitalist class, though, right? So the thing is, like, anyway, now I'm giving away that whole game, but Hawaii didn't have that system. Hawaii had a system where the appearance, right? And that's a lot of what I'm talking about. It's like what's fun about like period pieces and like stories and shows and games about and books about the Heian court in Japan, or the feudal court in the European courts, or Bridgerton, alternate European court, right? Is like the art and the relationship drama and the wardrobes. I mean, they're like fantastic. A lot of work did go into like producing these gowns. I mean, so I was like, oh my gosh, there's like 10 costume changes per character in some of these episodes. I mean, a lot of the work is just like crafting, setting up the gilded columns and putting all the paintings on the walls, getting every cup and teapot placed, getting the table in the right place, getting all the servants' clothing right, getting all the nobles' clothing right. The nobles go through like so many costume changes in one 40-minute, 50-minute episode. So that's like, and obviously you have to write it and you have to act. It's a lot of work to create the drama, right? And to create the thing that's holding your interest. There's many things, right? But and like that's like it's like people are still. I feel like people are still attracted. People still like want to hear stories about these kinds of things. Like obviously they do, because you can go from like free Palestine, destroy capitalism and all inequality and racism, and be like on the street, be like, comrades, we're all comrades, and then people will come home and be like watching a show. People will come home and be watching a show about super unjust, tiny minorities of people running the world, and so there's something, but it's kind of like what part of what draws people to those shows, as I said, is the art. And so like you could still have the art, and like there are countries and there are places that like still have like shows and events, right? And like the Met Gala is kind of like, I would say, a holdover from It not a holdover. It just is the continuation of a neo-feudal structure where you have the richest dynastic and the most powerful. And many of them are, what they call them nepo babies, but that's just feudalism. Which fused, and it was never not. I argue feudalism and capitalism are not really two separate systems. They overlay and interact with each other and manifest in different ways. And neither one has ever been replaced by or exists apart from the other one, right? Sometimes one of them is more prominent and more written about, but there's always, to have an oligarchy, you have an inbuilt, right, to have a tiny minority of people having vast quantities of the dollar coinage wealth, right, the coin of the realm, right. You already have a built-in hereditary power transference system, even if it's not formally recognized. In the British and the French in 17, 1800s, it was extremely formalized. The hereditary, who marries who became very, very ritualized, right? Like, you must get the blessing from the queen. You must, you are raised and groomed by your parents, by your nobility, to be the perfect eligible future, lady to a lord, and and everything gets really wrapped up in that. But that's really, I would argue that's a lot of that is, and it's obviously the structure of, the king giving title to lords and vassals, right, and then in exchange for military service, etc. But these are and that is different from a hereditary oligarchy of Romans or Greeks, right, or Americans, who like the NYPD, right, NYPD are the knights of the global nobility, right? So, for example, just as an example, right, the billionaire, a handful of business magnates, the business elite of New York, which is the business elite of the world. Let's be real. They're the billionaire class. The United States is the capital of capitalism and imperialism, and New York is the capital of that. And so the billionaires, they give millions of dollars, and they were shown to be, this past week revealed that the mayor, who is the commander in chief of the domestic military, NYPD, he was gifted, he was asked and told to suppress and crack down on the college students, right, using his police as maximum police violence as possible. And he was gifted all kinds of money, all kinds of bribes, and the police are also paid directly by the billionaire class, right, who are also the lord and lady class. They're all, virtually all of them are literally, or sometimes they're literally descendants. Most of the time, 90% of Britain's wealthy billionaire class are direct descendants of lords, counts, viscounts, barons, marquess, duke, duchesses, kings, and queens, right? The King of England is a billionaire, just as another example, right? And they pay the police. The police are the knights. So in exchange, the knights are the police. That's why I say ACAB is also AKAB. The knight, in exchange for your military service to suppress the peasant uprisings, right? That's the real purpose of the knights, right? And it's not to vie for greater territory for an individual noble or lord against the rival. Having a feud has to do with the other people other nobilities you were fighting with. But to fight with other nobles over territory and land and resources and money, but mainly is to maintain the class structure, right? So the police, in exchange for your military service, in exchange for your policing services as a knight, you were gifted resources personally, just like cops are paid more than most people in the United States, right? And now they're building 69 cop cities. Because why? Because a peasant uprising in the neo-feudal system is rapidly approaching, right? Because the peasant uprising in the neo-feudal, the court fears for its heads in their 200-story buildings, right? In Bloomberg's towers, Elon in his rusting Cybertruck village, he's worried about what will happen, right? When these millions and millions of very unhappy, very hungry H5N1 infected COVID brain, hoping they are as COVID brain damaged peasants as possible, so they can't figure out that people like him are who's responsible for all this, right? They're very worried, and so they give their knights, the police, all the money they have. So the feudal system and the capitalist system, these are not, I would argue, different systems, and they directly coordinate. But there was far more focus on, again, in Bridgerton, it focuses on the levels of ritualization of the passing on of dynastic, unjust, collected capital wealth, right? I mean, there's land, yes, and then that's important, but then also there is money with that, and the capital becomes more important the greater your internal feudal system acquires, the greater lands and territories you can acquire under a colonial system, right? The more important the capital, the money becomes, right? Because then more power gets stored in the dollars accumulated from Africa, Asia, Latin America, than simply from a tiny acreage of sheep or agricultural farmers, right? And so a lot of the Gothic era is basically the Gothic era with all of the castles. The empty castles is a result of the global plunder, right, by the European hereditary aristocracies, getting sucked into London, right, and that surpasses the wealth of mere, local unjust hereditary aristocrats, like a king or a queen. A lord of 500 acres is nothing compared to, an imperial, an imperial benefactor from, hundreds of millions of acres of Africa, and the sugar or the slaves that he's selling on his ships, right? So, the system doesn't change, right? In Europe, the system is the same system. It's just that, the exact acreage matters less, and so the Gothic castles are the lords and the ladies, who couldn't make the jump or failed to, couldn't, or were outcompeted or couldn't make that jump. Their copper mines run dry. That's like Crimson Peak, right? The copper mines run dry. Their peasants all leave. They don't have, their servants are all gone. They're defamed. I think it's Tom Hiddleston in Crimson Peak has to come to America to try to figure out how to, again, he comes to America to try to marry up the ladder again in the movie Crimson Peak, to try to revitalize his fortunes, right? Which it doesn't work out so well. But anyway, long story short, I'm going like way off. But that's a part of, like, that's a lot of what Neofeud explores as well, is like the how the feudal system and the so-called different capitalist system is not that different. Like how the racial separation and the racial systemic racial inequalities, right? So that certain classes of people are lesser and others are greater. Like in Neofeud specifically, is like inherent, and that's in order to get to a level of extreme wealth, like just the maximum wealth, you need to have the racial inequities to maintain imperial colonial relationships, right, or slave master relationships, right, so that you can extract 100% of the wealth and the labor value from your workers, right? Or if you have a colony, right, you can extract an entire continent's wealth, right? You can suck all of the trillions of dollars. It's like hundreds of trillions have been taken from India, just India, by Britain in the last centuries, right? And so by deeming, well, these are lesser people, and the Chinese and the African, these are lesser peoples. So the racial inequity justifies to all the people that will have to work as, sailors, soldiers, right, accountants, all the people that have to work in that system, and even to convince a lot of the people in those colonies that they deserve their treatment, it requires a racial component. The Greeks had the same thing for the Hellenics above the African and Asiatics. Many of them were Palestinians, right? Some of the Greek slaves were literally Palestinians, and that justified the maximum. The oligarchy produced by Greece was under that racist system. The Romans had their own. The non-Roman system. The non-Romans themselves were lesser peoples, which was itself a form, not the racism that we know today, but it was a Roman supremacism against everyone else was lesser and owed everything they had to Rome, and if they didn't give it, then they would be sanctioned, crushed, militarily invaded. And so the British, of course, the Europeans had their social Darwinism, etc., to maintain the differences in wealth, to maximize the returns to the hereditary capitalist feudalist aristocracies. They needed that arbitrary phenotypical characteristics. Black skin, wide noses make you lesser than human, right? And they had the millions of university professors and scientists were devoted, phrenologists, right? The social Darwinists, right? Everyone, I mean, not just scientists, the whole society, intellectuals, right, were dedicated, right? The Chinese question, the African question, there were entire novels. They're not novels, just like novels, white papers, scientific papers, doctorates. Millions of people's university degrees were based on arguing for phrenology, and not just nowadays. Oh, well, that's ridiculous. It was not ridiculous. It was very beneficial. It is false and horrible, but phrenology was very, very, very beneficial to a tiny minority of meritless, deeply immoral, deeply hubristic, self-inflated, billionaire, dynastic, maniacal leaders, right? Who were much less kind and much less graceful than Bridgerton, it must be said, by historical record, right? Anyways, so that's where, like, it gets complicated, because it's like, we don't really want to necessarily like give. We don't want to necessarily like give like a better rap than is deserved to that era of people, right? And obviously they weren't not racist in Britain in the 1800s, right? But at the same time, it's the long story short of that is that it is complicated, but that I think that the show is not a this is exactly what happened, super the show is not a we are doing 1800s exactly as it was, right? It's not a documentary. It's not a biopic going for maximum historical accuracy, right? It's just like a fun show. I mean, there are like pop songs, like chart-topping songs that are being played in string quartet style, right? They're like being played in a classical 1800s musical style, but they're like a Billie Eilish song or something, So it's not. It's definitely like no. It's like there's actual references to some characters, but there was no the Queen. I think there was a Queen Charlotte. The Queen has a historical equivalent, but this is not who she is, right? It's just she kind of is like that queen from that time period. Queen Charlotte had her the Mad King was her husband, but and so that's a similarity. There are some reference points, but none of them are like hard reference points, and none of the actual characters that are the main characters were real historical existing lords and ladies, because when we would have documentation of all of that, right? So the show is basically kind of a alternate history show, and it's pretty clear from the get-go. And once you see the Black Queen of England, you're like, this is like this is like a Marvel Earth 2 or whatever they call it. Second, Earth 146 or whatever they call that when they started throwing multiverse stuff into their comic books. And so, anyways, okay. So let me get out of here sooner than later. So, and so having like all of the relationship back and forth, and having the clothing change, the costume changes, and the fun sets, and like the feudal society does make for drama, because like I said, there's very high stakes. People can lose their entire, people can be disgraced forever with the wrong, if you smile or you wave the wrong way to the wrong person at the wrong time. If you're seen, like, part of it is Nicole Coffins. If you are a young, eligible on the market lord, right? You single lord, and you speak too much to the wrong young woman, right? Who is also unmarried. It causes this great scandals in the paper. I mean, it's everyone's life is hyper scrutinized, right? Everything they do is like, it's like high school but worse, Well, it's like high school. High school is a recreation of the feudal court system to practice for the office, which is the actual neo-feudal court system, where a hereditary capitalist, racist, colonialist aristocracy of CEO corner office princes, right, who are mediocre white man bosses, right, who are not good at their job, just like feudal white man lords have their place, and they get to and the boardroom meeting and the PowerPoint presentation is just a modern court, right, where everybody gets to vie for power and vie for the next VP of marketing and rat race in the office, right? The office is just a recreation of the feudal court in many ways, and so is the university system, right? Which is all about greasing the right palms, right? The university conferences is where everybody goes, oh, hello, and practices their best handshakes, and right, and then collectively enacts GENOCIDE on PALESTINEs, right? Just as the British were doing around the world, right? It's so like the academic and the office court and the high school court are similar to the feudal court. They come directly from them. The gala ball is just like the big ball for the modern neo-feudal court for the top brass, right? But your LinkedIn network is the digital feudal court, right? Now, but in the feudal times, it was much more strictly monitored. Like everything you did, all the gossips, right? All the gossip is written, and Nicola Coffin is a character that actually writes one of these papers that is secretly printed through a series of handoffs, including leaving her Lady Whistledown's latest scandals in a piece of paper inside of a Bible in a church that is then secretly run off and printed, right? So, but all of that is like it's not just like, oh well, people are doing that to keep themselves occupied. It's like if a lord or a lady misstepped during that courting process, right? Or who would be the diamond of the season, right? So in these scenes, like the Queen of England is sitting there, right, with her great majestic hair. She has amazing hairstyles. We gotta say that. She also has black hairstyles. Like she has like full on. She's got a full on Queen of England has a giant African AF afro. It's like it's pretty amazing stuff. I'm sure it pisses off a lot of people who read the Daily Mail. So anyway, I don't know what the family feel about it, but anyways, people come before her, the young debutantes, the young girls who are now eligible to become some lord's lady, right? And to settle the new generation of tracts of land and entitlements, right? And titles, and which is land, which is wealth, which is power, right? And which is comfortability, and which is being free from need. It's a rule that I like this one scene where there's a rule where one of the black where is this? Yeah, this guy, the black former boxer turned club owner in the city, turned his family is now, he himself, but his family, his son is actually a baron, right? But that makes him also a noble, right? And I think it might be this scene. He is going to his club and like pouring drinks, and somebody from the court comes down and says, "Oh, are you having a good time here in this club pouring drinks? You like pouring drinks, do you?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is my club." And then the courtman says, "You are a noble now. You cannot work. You must not work." And then he says, "Well, but I thought that now I'm a lord, right? I'm part of the nobility. I can do whatever I want, right?" And the man says, "Well, we must preserve." He doesn't say this, but this is what is implied, right? It would be unbecoming and it is unacceptable for you, right? From the perspective of the rest of the aristocracy, which is who holds the power here, right? If you work, right? This sets precedent, right? If you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, right? If you give the peasants if you give the peasants an equal share of the pie, they'll want the whole pie soon, right? If you give the working class more than is enough to get their house, healthcare, and food, if every working class person in the capitalist America is housed, the next thing they'll want is universal housing. They'll want like a Chinese system or something like that, some crazy thing like that, right? And we can't let that happen. So if you free a slave, next thing all the slaves will want to be free. So because as a former commoner, right? He really liked bartending though. He liked boxing, he liked bartending, he liked doing these things, right? But then it's like, now that he has power, now that he has the wealth and the power of as a noble, he's limited in what he can, at least publicly, he's limited in what he can do, right? Because if he does certain things, like that's counted as working, right? Now this is also kind of a sad thing about this system, right? The Western system, or the unjust feudal dynastic capitalist racist colonialist system, is that like, if you actually want to do work, because a lot of work it brings joy to people's lives, right? It's like a fun thing to do. He's not the only character, right? Like, being a good mechanic is a rewarding thing in itself. Being a good computer programmer, I like computer programming. I like making games, right? If I was a noble, if I was a silver spook, if I became an actual, not a Hawaiian noble because like Kalakaua, but if I became like a European Western style, aristocrat, I don't work, although I squeeze peasants and I unjustly extract labor value from peasants, workers, slaves, right? Then I couldn't make video games anymore. That would be kind of sad. Just think about it, it's kind of sad. I'd be like, so I would just have to, what would I do all day? I just have to hang out with kind of not very interesting, not very smart vipers who are only good at dating. Like, they're only good at like wearing clothes nicely and talking to each other in super ritualized. I mean, it's very nice, very cool costumes. That's really nice, but I mean, it would get boring. I mean, it's nice to watch it a little bit, but then I'd be like, I wouldn't want to be in court. My entire job is just like going to other lords and ladies and rich and shaking hands and just being like, "Oh yes, hello, Miss Feather Blossoms. Oh, good to see you, Lord Durgington. Oh yes. Oh, how was the tea? Oh, it was fantastic." Just having to remember all of these fucking people's names is annoying. It's just like, that sounds so draining, and they're not particularly interesting people. That's the thing, right? Because your entire life is wrapped up in maintaining this intricate web of feudal capitalist, colonialist relationships in order to maintain the power. Oh yes, and the lesser lord such and such is now coming up and is, I mean, unless you really, 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 really like keeping up on the gossip. It's just like a giant high school gossip. All day, every day, that's all you do. You can't do science. Like there is a lady who is like trying to do science, and she's the one weird lady, right? She's like, I would like to know how this hot air balloon works, right? And the real noble lady who's like into the aristocracy, she's like, a guy comes up and is like, madam, can I tell you about the new this brand new amazing invention, the lamp? And she's like, no, you may not, right? Because she doesn't care. I mean, but it's kind of like, I mean, if you really are into the intrigues and the backstabbing and the front stabbing and the side stabbing and you know, and that, but you know, but and not just into that, and also okay with the injustice that all of that holds up, then I guess. But you know, there's many other things to be pursuing in life, you know, rather than just like lording it over other people and trying to find somebody more powerful than you to fuck so that you can increase your estates. You know, that's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of sad. You know, it's fun to play Risk a little bit, maybe. You can like play Risk or StarCraft or, you know, watch a show. But I mean, then you want to go back to life where you do other things, right? And like contribute to society in some meaningful way, right? And also where, you know, also where your entire value is not wrapped up in how marriageable you are and how high you can marry up, you know? And like a lot of people, a lot of characters in Bridgerton, right? And like, you know, there's, you know, obviously there's many novels that were written in this time that were about like how how not great and how many the problems and the even there's a recent Emma Stone movie, right, about the Frankenstein like character, right? But like that's you know, it's written now, but it's like it's about the desires of many people to escape those societies. Like she wants to read, and it's like, you can't read as a woman. You cannot be reading. What are you reading? You know, I mean, maybe you could read some court drama, but that's about it. But you don't read. You don't get educated, right? It's kind of like that guy who just gave a presentation at the Benedictine College. Women, your life begins when you have children. You know, and that is the entire and only goal in your entire life, right? And like, that's not the same as it, but you know, the feudal, I mean, the feudal aristocratic noble society world is not indifferent. It's not so different from that. It's just like, your life is about marrying up and everything you can do to do that, you know, and you know, and your life begins when you find your lord suitor, right? And then you can just enjoy your, I mean, I guess after that you can enjoy your life being a lord. But you know, but there are still things that you are still limited, right? As we show, right? You can't just box. You can't do work, you know, you cannot work, right? Other people work, your servants work, your butler works, right? Your cooks, the people that cook your food, right? Your ladies in waiting work. They dress you. Everywhere else works, right? Opera singers work, right? Musicians work. Everyone else work. You only play. And like, obviously, like, that's better than just working all day and slaving away. But it's also like, you know, even the queen is like, the queen has certain protocols she has to follow, right? She has to be in X and Y and Z place at X and Y and Z time, right? Like in France, like the whole process, it was an hours-long process of getting dressed every day. It was like being an actor. It was like being the ghoul in Fallout. Every day you had to get dressed by this whole procession of people who to touch the royal's body was like a great honor, and everyone had to get their appropriate allotment of honor per day to help dress the Dauphine and the Dauphin, you know, and it's like a, you know, and so that all of that system together maintained the power. And kept the power locked into a tiny minority of people. The thing is that is necessary. Like it is necessary for the nobility not to work, right? It is necessary for not. But the thing nowadays, right? It's like the rich sometimes will say, "Oh, I'm so hardworking. I'm Elon. I wake up at 4 a.m. and I work till 11 at night, and I eat like 3 calories per day, and somehow I still live. And right. But so there are some differences there, but that's all a joke. That's all a pretense too. Like Elon, the billionaire class cannot be seen really to be mingling directly with the lower classes. Certainly not at a large scale. Otherwise, people say, well, why do you have so much money? Right? Elon has to prove, like he still has to prove. Like nowadays, it's a little different. Like he has to prove. At that time, it was like I am better because I am nobility. Period. Right? And you have to prove and maintain that by dressing and looking fancier and having bigger hair and bigger clothes and bigger skirts and just being the people that don't work, right? And speaking better fake accents like received pronunciation, right? Nowadays, it's like, I work so hard because I am a billionaire and I deserve those billions because, look, I invented a Tesla. Look, I made renewable energy. I made electric cars. I'm making a multiplanetary civilization with all of my SpaceX rockets that I personally invented. And there's a lot that has to go into convincing and proving, trying to convince as many people as possible that like people like Elon Musk, the modern royalty, deserve everything that they have. Right. Different set of lies, but it's still a whole that is part of his. If he has a job, that is part of his job. Right. And, he is a bit freer, and people like him are a bit freer. I don't feel bad for Elon, obviously, but in a certain sense I do, because Elon, because he is the descendant of hereditary aristocratic nobility of Europe, specifically apartheid South Africa, right? And his father was an emerald mine owner, right? And he had millions of men. So Elon, like the nobility, will never know what it's like to actually become, Elon will never know what it's like to actually become good at something like boxing or bartending or contribute meaningfully to the world, right? Because Elon has forever, since birth, been limited. He's basically an infinite spoiled child. That's what feudal aristocrats are, right? He has never been required to like get proficient at something, whether that's technology, programming, designing cars, right, making PayPal. None of these things he's actually done, right? That's why he's such a loser, and it's kind of depressing to watch him, because he just says ridiculous. I mean, there's such a long list. I don't even want to bring it up, right? That the sun will go, red giant, in 5 billion years. You can't even do space science right, yet you claim to be the number one, leader into future human space exploration, but you don't even know the first thing about space, right? And when it's cars, all the Cybertrucks are like a laughing stock, because it is a bad design, and it's like Elon himself. Right? Elon himself is like personally directly responsible for all of his broken, rusting Cybertrucks, because he insisted on this design. So like Elon as a modern neo-feudal Bridgerton of the modern Bridgerton court member of the 2020s, right? His inability to do anything right, actually, in the same way that the American and Western leadership is unable to do it. They can't win any war. They can't figure out what policy will help their people, right? The United States, the West is declining. All the statistics are bad. Everyone's getting viruses. More of them are spreading. The inequality is through the roof. They have to, people are, blowing up the universities, not blowing up, but they are at the universities protesting ongoing, obvious, horrific war crimes. They're losing economically to China. They're losing militarily to Russia. The whole West is just falling apart. Everything they do is a mistake. Everything they do is a mistake. Everything they do is a blunder, right? Well, that's what happens when you have hereditary aristocracies, And like the thing is, the periods in which there has been slightly more success, has been because of a brief window of military supremacy, greater military technological advancement, very brief, for about 100 or 150 years, right, between the West and the East, or the Western capitalist, feudalist, racist, noble aristocracy-based system like the Europeans and the Euro settlers, and to an extent Japan, right? The European United States, right? The NATO, the G7, right? But they've always been like incompetent nobles, you know? They're only good at pretending to other people that they're very deserving of all the great power and wealth that they have, right? They're very good at like the showing, right? They're good at orating, you know, they're good at marketing, right? They're good at talking themselves up. They're good at like saying, oh yes, well I'm much more eloquent and well spoken than those you know lower black and brown poor people. Look at how advanced. So the evolution, and then they pay scientists to write that, you know, the people of Hull and North England, they are a different race. They are genetically inferior. Their breeding is of such terrible quality. That's why they can't speak properly, right? That is scientifically absolutely just nonsense, right? So they're not good at science either, right? Because most Western science is about reinforcing the unjust lie and mass violence based power and wealth that the aristocracy, oligarchy has. It's not real science. You know, it's not actually science. The brief periods, I mean, like after the communist socialist near revolution in the United States, is the only time when there was actually some advancement there, and to even compete with NASA, for the U.S. to compete with the Soviet Union in the space race, because that was the return of the military power of a non-Western places like China and Russia, right? They're leading the global South, right? That's the non-European places. In order to try to play catch up with Russia, because if you can put a Sputnik in space and then a man orbiting the Earth, and if you can put a Russian on the moon, you can definitely put a Russian warhead in New York, right? That's really what the space race is about. It was the West worrying it was going to lose its military supremacy to Russia, to Soviet Union, right? And but in order for NASA to compete, in order for U.S. and the West to compete technologically, they had to put a socialist system into the NASA operated fundamentally non-Euro capitalist colonialist feudalistically. It had to be socialist, right? And there was the push in the near end of the Western colonial capitalist racist feudalist system in the 20s and the 30s. And the huge union and communist socialist parties was part of, like, it actually helped the United States in a lot of ways, right? But that has all been since obviously the 70s and the 80s and the neoliberal era and the Reaganomics that has destroyed all of that. The Reaganomics and the neoliberal, the last 40 years of flatlining wages, ever increasing inequality, that was about the United States returning to its true self, which is European, right? Which is 1800s Britain, right? It was the last 40 years is not a decline. From a European perspective, the last 40 years is an ascendancy, right? The 2020s is the greatest time. The 2020s, right, when you have 3 billionaires owning as much wealth, right? 3 hereditary aristocratic oligarchs owning as much wealth as the entire United States, right? That is the return, right, of the great European system. That is the return. The 50s and the 60s, those were not the great. I mean, that was nice for some white men. Commoner white men had it good. Women and black people, not so much, right? But commoner white Europeans had it good. Some Europeans, some Brits, some French, some Americans, especially Canadians, right? The Reagan Leave It to Beaver Stepford wife era, that was good for some white men. Commoners, peasants, right? But that it was a disgrace to the European system, right? That was a disgrace, and they have since the Euro Americans have since fixed the problem. And now you have neo-feudal techno kings like Elon Musk. He literally called himself a techno king in the SEC and the FTC in the United States federal government. His title is techno king. So Elon has redeemed the United States. Elon has redeemed the Anglo-feudal overlay on top of Turtle Island that is called the United States, right? And that's so great. Anyways, so obviously it's not great for most people and the planet and the world generally. It's not even great for Elon, but I mean, it is the return of the real system of Euro feudalism. So, anyways, but so the graceful decline, is, because we do have to still deal with this, where we, people still want to watch shows. People are gonna want to watch period dramas, right? And also, the U.S. is declining, right? That's another thing. The U.S. and the West, are declining. The multipolar world is arising. It's inevitable. It's what's happening, right? And the question is like, will the decline be graceful? Which means like having empathy for your fellow people. Will it be in a way that is respectable, that is honorable, that is net beneficial, that is least destructive as possible? Will the decline of the United States and the racist, capitalist, white supremacist colonial system, the imperial structures, right, going back all the way to the Greek and Roman era, will that be a extremely crass, like the well-tailored, very composed, aristocrats of yore? Will it be well composed? Will it minimally disrupt the party that is the global South, the BRICS, the multipolar world, right? Win-win cooperation, the rise of socialism and plurinational societies, and liberation, decolonization. Will the West, right, be a poorly groomed, disruptive barbarian, right? Waving, just throwing champagne on the guests at the party, on the multipolar black and brown and Asian and indigenous new global party, and the celebration of, with the BYD, Chinese most advanced electric vehicles, solar power technology, high speed rail, right? Interconnection between all peoples, great new shows, health and housing, and brand new apartments with that are like Star Trek apartments that Chinese sell for like $10,000 now, right? And everybody having them, Yemen having their own solar farms, right? All people of the planet being represented in TV shows, and you have Asian K-pop stars and South American and African, movie stars, right? In the global party, right? That's happening. That is partially being visualized in this screenshot. Will the West be, what's her name? Will the West be Cressida? You know what I'm saying? Will the West be Cressida? That's the girl on the left there, right? The Cressida on the right. I'm sorry, right? The Cressida girl is jealous. She's very nasty for a lot of the shows. She's been like a real bitch. She's been really nasty to lots of people, right? She kind of like hates on whoever is the main character. She's often like hating on them, like bullying them. Like she steps on Nicola Coughlin's dress, right, and tries to rip it, right? She is the Tanya Harding, right? That's what the West is, right? Will the West be the spiteful, pinched mouth, bullying, just mad that it can't have everything? Will the United States continue to try to kneecap and Tanya Harding China, right? China is the Nancy Kerrigan that's like winning the Olympics, right? Because of hard work that she's put in, right? With the revolution and fighting an imperial, planetary, colonialist, capitalist, racist society. Not Britain and its crown, not the least of the competitors that China has defeated, or the oppressors they have defeated, right? Will Britain, right, and the United States and AUKUS and NATO, will they be the Cressida? Will they ungracefully rip Africa's shirt and throw champagne onto China's beautiful new hair decorations? Will the West go the route of the disgraceful decline and just try to table flip and just knock the candles over, make a giant scene, right? Try to wreck the global multipolar, anti-racist, socialist path, environmentally renewing world? Will the West be upset that they can't suppress indigenous people and, like Cressida, try to stomp them back in the ground, like in Palestine and here in Hawaii? Will the United States contribute to try to suppress, Hawaii's hydroelectric power, like they suppressed Hawaii's socialist hydroelectric powered anti-racist advanced society? The U.S. was a Cressida that wrecked our party. Hawaii was like Nicola Cropper, like coming. We were like the debut. We were like the glimmering diamond in the global court. We were the Venice of the Pacific. We were the it place. We were the it girl, right? And the U.S. and Europe, they were like Cressida, like, no, you can't. You are not. I'm not very good at things, but if I beat you up enough, right? If the U.S. and Europe crush Hawaii's socialism, multipolarity, hydroelectric, and forcefully install fossil fuel, if the U.S. President, Mr. McKinley and Mr. Dole and the white capitalists go to Hawaii and smash that electric, if we smash and rip that electric hydropower out of Hawaii, take that socialist system out of there, right? Put in a private capitalist aristocracy, right? William is like the first CEO of the Hawaiian private fossil fuel electric company was a white aristocrat, basically, right? And if we put our man in there, right, then we can crush that socialist renewable Hawaii back in the ground, and then the world will be worse for it, but we'll be on top. And that's all that matters. We don't care. We don't care if the world is worse. We don't care if the world is inequitable. What we care is we're gonna wreck we will destroy the entire ball, right? We will if we, like Hillary Clinton said, I would rather see the end of the world than see a world where China is ahead of the United States, right? So the United States is seeing this happening. There's a black queen, there's an Asian and a black queen. Africa and Asia are on top. And the U.S. is in the party screaming, and the Europeans are in their party screaming and throwing shit everywhere. They're pooping in their hand and flinging shit. That's like trying to sabotage pipelines and sending all their troops and money and resources to go die to lose to Russia, right? And this is very unbecoming. It's very unbecoming of a European so-called civilized young lady. The United States is not very composed. It's very unbecoming of a young lady to be doing these activities. To be going to China and begging for money, and then also threatening with missiles, banning TikTok, accusing people of genocide while you're doing genocide literally everywhere. It's very unbecoming of a young lady. The U.S. should aim for a more graceful decline of the inequalities that it and its predecessors have benefited from and inflicted on the rest of the world, and it should just appreciate. It's just interestingly, there's Jill Stein is running in the Green Party. I was listening to Jill Stein and Michael Hudson, who is a very interesting economist who's spoken very accurately historically, which is unusual for Western economists. He's an advisor, right? And whether she gets elected or not, it's not what I'm here. I'm not here to say that that's going to change everything. But the things that they were discussing was correct, which was that the United States and the West, the collective West, are in the throes of the collapse of their system. They cannot even try to maintain their dominance worldwide. They are militarily losing to Russia. They are economically behind China. They are the Chinese planetary win-win cooperation, Belt and Road Initiative of mutually lifting up other nations economically rather than subjugating them and indebting them, which is just the European, racist, a classist system enforced worldwide. It's just colonialism and neocolonialism and the IMF and the World Bank. These are just, the nobility and the lowly workers, but on a global scale, right? And the attitude is identical, right? Which is that we do not work, and you work. But the difference is globally, there's billions of people, right? In Britain, it's only a few million, right? But globally, right, we do not work. Whereas the Chinese system is, why not let everybody work? Why don't everybody do some work, and then everybody benefit from that work, right? And why not everybody have a good quality of living, and everybody do work, an appropriate amount of work, right? And let's not judge people based upon their skin color and their culture, and who's high and low culture. Let's just have everybody do work, and you can dress up on holidays, and you have like festivals where you dress up nice and your cultural clothing, right? But let's not have the entire system based upon these arbitrary characteristics and place and parents of your birth. This nonsense. This is kind of nonsensical. It's also kind of like it's kind of frustrating to a lot of people, even amongst your nobility. So let's not have that. It's immoral. It's unethical. It's not very good. It benefits a tiny minority of the most psychopathic gossip people who are obsessed with gossiping all day long, and megalomaniacal people. That's who benefits the most from these systems. But most people aren't that. But the psychopathic, gossipy, and bullshit artists and sociopaths are forcing everyone else to love or believe this is the best system. So why don't we throw that out, right? And so it's not going to be really possible. It isn't possible for the United States empire, and it's beyond simply the U.S. empire, because some the British and the Europeans like to talk about empires collapse and then another one forms and they last 250 years, right? But that is a Western view, right? From a non-Western view, from a South or a East view, or the global majority view, right? From the Chinese perspective, for African perspective, right? There was the Roman Empire that came through a lot of Africa and parts of Asia, and that was really a nasty time. There's a lot of invasions, and then the Roman Empire collapsed. Right, the U.S. is the West's predecessor. Right, the Roman Empire collapsed, and then there was the great age of Islam, where you had universal healthcare. The universal healthcare system in the modern era was the Hawaiian formal universal healthcare system, but before that it was actually the Arab world had the Bimiristan system, universal healthcare, great progress in science and technology and engineering. You had the Silk Road, where China already had abolished slavery 2,000 years ago, and there were women feminist writers that were like prominent in China. The first university in the world was invented by an Arab in that age after the fall of the Roman Empire, right? So from the African and the Asian and indigenous Turtle Island, or the America's indigenous perspective, the Pacifica perspective, right? There was an age of, there was a Roman Empire. It collapsed, and that was amazing when everyone was cooperating in win-win cooperation for most of the planet, right? And then the colonial era was when that reemerged, right? And then the new, Spanish, British, French empire, now American empires came about, and that was just, there was a series of empires, and that was really horrible, right? And when these empires didn't, when the Spanish fell, they didn't really fall all the way, because it lost the scale of its holdings. The French and the British empires lost the scale of their holdings, right? But the imperial system as a whole never declined. The biggest financial center shifted around, the biggest military center shifted around, but the Europeans collectively made up a new kind of like slightly multi-centered Roman Empire, right? Now the United States is now the core center, right? The U.S. is the most Roman because it's centering in itself. It's even taken over a lot of its European. It's in many ways taken over. In some ways, collaborates with its European predecessor empires, The French obviously getting kicked out of New Caledonia now is one obvious example, and a lot of Africa. New Caledonia is in the Pacific, by the way. So the end of French and American colonization in the Pacific is coming very soon. But so there's New Caledonia and African colonies are the evidence that the French Empire never ended. The British Empire never ended. Britain controls less directly because Britain just uses America. Britain is America. It is a lot of the same. The CIA and the British Navy went over and trained. Sorry, the CIA was trained by the British intelligence, and the U.S. military was trained by the British Royal Navy. I mean, they just transferred the power. They transferred a lot of the core central leadership and the financial center from London into D.C. and Wall Street, but it's all Anglo, right? So the collapse of empire now is different than the decline of the Spanish Empire or the decline of the Dutch Empire or the decline of the French Empire or the decline of the British, because from the global South perspective and the global majority perspective, the Black and Brown and Indigenous world, it's just been a series of imperial Romans for the last 500 years, right? Since 1492 at least, right? It's just been 500 years of a cluster of Roman Empire coming out and terrorizing, subjugating, and stealing, and enslaving, and being incredibly racist and giving lectures at the same time, right? And this time they brought more crosses than last time, right? I mean, towards the end of the Roman Empire, they started picking up the cross. But for the last 500 years, it's been like all crosses. Little. There's some atheists. The new thing for the global South is, oh wow, after 2000s, they bomb you with atheists. They bomb you with atheists in the cockpit. That's new. That's new. Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins got everybody to go blow people up in Iraq without a cross inside. That's an innovation. That's the great Western innovation, is blowing people up without a cross as a mission civilatrice justification. So that's the great technological science. That's the great civilizational crown jewel. Is new atheist nuking. Anyway, so the graceful or not graceful decline of this global inequity now, right? Hopefully it becomes more graceful. Is like what I'm trying to get at, obviously. The not graceful decline now is not just the decline of the U.S. empire that will be, Westerners will say, the Western left will say, oh, well, or the Western left and center and right will all say, they will simply be replaced by another empire. But this is missing. This is great. A lack of education is leading to that conclusion. That's not actually what's happening. What's happening is, from a global majority perspective, from the older, more ancient, and wiser, better educated, and more moral global majority's perspective, right? From the Black, Brown, Asian world, and for the indigenous Austronesian world, right, which I'm a part of, this is the decline of 500 years of the new Roman Empire, right? This is the end of the 1492 to the 2020s, right? And because there isn't a replacement for the United States, there's many would be, they think India, some people be, well, we're gonna move our money, we're gonna try to move into China. India is not doing very well, and the parts of India that are doing better are the ones that are the parts of and elements and forces in India that are working with China and joining the multipolar world, like the more Kerala left socialist edge. The parts of India that are most westernized are going down with the West. These are the Rishi Sunaks, and the Rishi Sunaks and the Vivek Ramaswamis, and the Nikki Haley. She's Indian. She's from India, right? They're going down the tubes with the West, right? So there is no new colonizer kaleidoscope jewel, right? To go from because you go from Spanish to Dutch to French and British now to American. You're just kind of cycling through this cabal, through this gang of gangsters, and you just finding the biggest new gangster. But the thing is, there isn't really a new one. The planet also won't sustain a new one. So the only possibility is the decline of the entire imperial, aristocratic, feudalist, racist, capitalist structure, the colonialist structure. That's like the only possibility. The only question is, will it decline in a way where, and that was the Jill Stein Michael Hudson point, is like, this is happening whether we like it or not. So we should choose to work to become a. I think Jill Stein uses the term she uses the term team player. Are we going to be a team player, or are we going to insist on dominating everybody else and just beating everyone else up? Right? That sounds easy. It sounds like obviously we're going to be a team player, right? But that is not how the West is. That's not how the U.S. is. That's not how the America is the planetary greater attractor of selfish non-team player, right? It is the greed is good. Greed is the best thing ever. Greater attractor, right? But that's what the West is, right? That's what the Roman Empire was. That's why the East. That's why West Asia calls it the Great Satan. It's because all the crooked, treacherous people that rip people off in their local communities and they get kicked out, right? Like Jair Bolsonaro, or like, in Afghanistan, Ghani, or the Saudi kings. Right? These people are not viewed highly in amongst a lot of the Arab world, right? But then they go to America, they go to Europe, right? And they get trained. They go to IMF. They get a schooling at the Georgetown. If they want to be a professional murderer, you go to School of Americas. You go to the Harvard or Princeton, Yale. You go to Oxbridge, right? You get trained by Larry Summers or some dark prince of capitalism like that, right? And then you come out as this horrible, evil planetary destroyer, and you back global militarism, capitalism, war. You back all the GENOCIDEs that the U.S. wants you to, and the West wants you to, right? So it sounds easy. Oh yeah, we'll just be a team player. But it's like, no, the U.S. is not just some place. The West is not just some place. Europe, it has like serious problem. It's kind of like, Twitter. That's where all the writers go, or like, Facebook. Oh man, there's like all boomers and Gen Xers on there. It's like this old, certain kind of people on there, and there's like, like this winner take all mechanism. Like, Google at one point, everything was Google search because. To start another search engine and compete with it would be so hard in that, noughties, early teens technological, a global digital landscape, right? To start another Google would be so hard. So Google was just the king of search for a long time. I don't know where it is now. It's falling apart with the West, but so the United States and Europe and the West collectively, right, is the Google of evil. It's like. You could start another center somewhere, but why would you? Just go to America and then they'll help you overthrow whatever was good in your country, crush the left, and give you back your oligarchic control. They've done it time and time again. Anytime there's a intervention, economically, militarily, coup, color revolution, if you're an evil fucking person, you want to make tons of money and have lots of wealth and be a hereditary aristocrat, or restore your hereditary aristocracy and your money and your clout and your power, under an actual authoritarian regime, the United States will help you do it, and the Europeans before that were the king. So if so that it seems like, oh well, obviously we'll just gracefully decline. We'll just choose to be better, but it's gonna be it's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna be a lot of work. You can see the work because that's every day we're seeing all of the college kids getting their faces smashed in by the police. Every day we're seeing, we're seeing people trying to, there's strikes and there's uprisings and people are like, the thing is, the Roman Empire had an attempt to gracefully decline. In the end, the Roman descendants of the Caesars, the hereditary aristocracy and the oligarchy in Rome, right? And it's not exactly the same system as the British hereditary aristocracy, but the Romans had generational wealth transferred from very wealthy empire having power accumulators at the center of the Roman court, and it transferred down to their children and to their closest confidants and closest the people they like the best. That's part of why Rome fell apart, like the West is falling apart, right? And in the end, the Romans didn't choose to decline gracefully. The Romans took their centurions, they took their sword and spear carrying warriors, right? The Romans took their knights, right? Like the Europeans took their knights and killed and massacred farmers when they asked for a better system, right? The Romans took all of their centurions, like the Americans are taking all their 69 cop cities full of police, like the Canadians and Germans are taking all their police, and the Romans the Romans enacted class war and crushed and smashed all of their commoners, the same way that the United States now, the Europeans now, and the Europeans historically, when they became close to when decline happened, the masses suffered. The masses were crushed and killed. The masses were obliterated, arrested, starved. Right? The rich never suffer in the West. They have never suffered. Only in very, very, very rich and the powerful and the hereditary aristocrats. Only in very few circumstances. This is why the French Revolution freaked everyone out, right? And then it didn't work because after the French Revolution, France now has the richest person in the world, and it still has dynastic hereditary aristocrats like Macron himself, and all and many of the banking elite and the gang of Paris, right? So the decline is not graceful as we speak. It's not going very well, but the people of the West have to, and the U.S. have to push to do whatever of all means necessary, including continuing the actions that are happening. I don't want to speak too directly about them because if I do, then I will have to figure out what stream I'm gonna have. I have to remake this entire stream again, like I did the last 2 weeks. But that all of those actions have to continue and they have to keep happening. And the New Caledonians and the Kanaki people are currently overthrowing their French overlords, their colonialist masters. And here in Hawaii, we will continue our actions against the U.S. illegal colonial capitalist occupation. And the main thing is take the big red buttons and the nuke and biological weapons of mass destruction buttons away from all of the hereditary aristocrats and oligarchs and billionaires. And neocons. If you're anywhere in the military or anywhere in the government, anywhere near the football with all the launch codes for all the ICBMs, get them away from Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Elon Musk, and all the political and business elite of the West. Okay, because the average people don't want everyone to die. Most people don't, but there are a tiny minority of these pissed off. The fallout is about the ungraceful decline of the West, right? If it was to happen, it would just be, we'll just we'll just blow the whole world up, and then we'll come back and rule over the ashes, right? That is just simply the biggest scale of what the U.S. did to Hawaii. If Hawaii gets better than us, rather than changing our system, right, helping our people, rather than the United States giving universal health care, rather than the Europeans changing their feudal system, they just choose to, if Hawaii has more books and writings and higher literacy rate and, they have better technology and they're inventing new submarines. If Hawaii becomes more advanced than Europe and America, we will simply crush Hawaii, right? And obviously they're trying to do that to China. But at the highest scale, the West is like, if capitalist, colonialist, racist, feudalist Western European system is going to collapse, we'll collapse the whole planet with nuclear annihilation first. That's why they're pushing NATO, just unhinged, pushing NATO, throwing troops, just doing everything possible to increase the risk of nuclear war. Because the people that run the West they have no morals, they have no scruples whatsoever. They are completely outside of their mind. The liberals are just completely outside their mind. They're living in alternate reality. Every candidate, Trump and Biden, are deeply mentally unwell, to put it mildly. One of them is awake for 3 minutes a day. The other one is literally wants to be Hitler. And the other one is Hitler. That's the difference. Trump wants to be Hitler. Biden is Hitler, sending in racist stormtroopers to beat the crap out of innocent people and enabling the mass direct killing of American citizens. Everything that's happening now is happening under a Democrat. Very important, right? So you have right. So you have and that is a design. That is not accident, right? The people that run the West let that happen. They encourage that, right? They're telling the mayor of New York, yes, no, beat the crap out of all of these peaceful protesters. Crush them all. Smash them all. We must keep doing GENOCIDE. We have to keep doing it for global plunder and keep our system in place, right? And in fact, we're going to increase the likelihood of nuclear war, bio war. We're not going to do anything for H5N1. Everyone drink raw milk. People are calling off the hook in California to get H5N1 infected raw milk, unpasteurized milk, right? Right? And the West is like, that's awesome, right? Because the sooner we can liquidate all these, Malthusianly liquidate all the humans, all these commoners, right? The knights slaughtering 100 peasants to stop the workers asking for political and economic justice in this 1500s Europe, right? The equivalent of the peasant massacre is the planetary COVID mass death and nuclear mass death, right? We're gonna teach those poors, right? Because that's the only thing. You can't massacre 1,000 people anywhere and expect people to change their mind now. There are too many huge, powerful alternatives to China, Russia, Iran, BRICS, SEO, multipolar world. You cannot just go and massacre some peasants now. You could bomb a lot of Iraqis and a lot of people in Afghanistan at Palestine. It's not going to do anything. That's not going to stop people now. The only answer is to kill everyone, or kill 99% or 90 to 99% of people, right? That's why I say you got to get the weapons away. Got to get the nukes and the biowarfare and all the other forms of mass death. Stop Bill Gates from geoengineering and shooting FEV or T virus into the jet stream, right? Bill Gates wants to kill everyone by putting T virus, super deadly virus like avian COVID fused hybrid virus into the jet stream on the pretense of geoengineering. I'm just kidding. He doesn't want to do that. But but the billionaire, they don't have any options now. The modern oligarchies, they don't have any options. So they have to simply be stopped. They will not stop. They have to be stopped. And I think most people recognize that now. The average person on the earth, even in the West, the average person is starting to recognize that now. They have to ban TikTok to stop people from recognizing it. It's pathetic. Anyways, so we have to, and then once I'm not saying like, if we get a Green Party in power, it's a high probability because we have straight up the most horrific, unelectable Democrat in power, and then you have Trump, which is just a horrible conservative on the other side, right? So the fraudulence of Western democracy has never been more transparently obvious than now, right? So there's opportunity for something to happen. I mean, just electing somebody apart doesn't change the fundamental structure, but it can be a good push in a different direction. If there were to be somebody in power that is, if somehow we get to a place where the interests of the masses are represented by whatever it is that is the government of the United States or some balkanized subsection of it, right? Or the confluence of what actually is governing the U.S. changes from these kind of unhinged neoliberal, neocon, old thinking, old decrepit co-warrior, liberal brain damaged people. If we get some better, then the decline will still happen, but the decline will be more graceful. The decline of the Western system will be more graceful, and the countries of the U.S. and of Europe, and Canada, etc., and the people there, and the people of the world will suffer less. The decline and the comparative differences of GDP, of technological advancement, even of military superiority between the United States and Europe and Canada. These cannot be, and China and Russia and Iran and many other non-Western countries, African countries. The decline is not reversible. This was even known. It was known in the 80s and the 90s, right? This is why China is the country that is going to fight the war with the U.S. in 2070s and fallout, right? It's because it was known that China and then Africa as well would eventually be the major stories of the 21st century. It was known, based on the trajectories of what was happening. And, this is why the CIA and the 0.1% use dialectical materialism all the time. They don't call it that, but they talk about thinking on grand scales of the changes in culture, economics, and civilization. And it was predictable that at the current rate of growth and the rise of China, given their trajectory, given their history, given their culture, given what they're doing now, barring like some major catastrophic unknown black swan change, China would be the number one economy on the planet. It would be the dominant player in the world. And the U.S., in the West, their leadership even knew that, but they're idiots because they are actually not that smart. They just, they circle jerk to Harvard skull and bones dissertations, which are written by not that smart, feudal, inherited, aristocratic, dynastic, clown. They're just a bunch of very nice words, like New York Times and the New Yorker. They're very pretty words, right? Very good at making pretty words. Very eloquent speech. Very vast diction, right? Even have lots of historical citations. It's too bad that history is all wrong, complicated, and misused and misallocated and full of half truths and lies, right? But like the feudal era, very good at nice presentations and beautiful cakes and nice clothes, right? But not that much substance there, Just very good at pretense. Anyways, that's the end of this stream. If you would like to support what we do here, you can get Neofeud at Steam for 70% off. It is on sale for the next 17 hours. So you have 17 hours, 34 minutes, and 40 seconds to run it down and skip and jump and fly and swan dive and gracefully pirouette, waltz to the Steam website and get yourself a Neofeud. Also, Neofeud is also a cyberpunk adventure game, and I spent 2.5 years doing the art, music, writing, programming, and half of the voice acting for this game as a solo dev. And every sale does go to support everything we do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative. And also, of course, you can get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. Neofeud is also on sale there, and is a game that also you can get if you don't have Steam. You can get it and not install Steam on itch.io. There's also decolonators, where you just kick a bunch of capitalist colonizer butts out of your sovereign country and make your country sovereign again. Indigent Star is a game set between Neofeud 1 and 2, and it is a game where an empire arrives on your planet to eradicate and plunder, and you must heal the land and people, prevent erasure of your native language and culture, and confront the invaders before it is too late. And there's several other games on this Steam site, itch site. Woman is a book by Howley, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is a book of that critiques that right-wing Protestant Christianity from the perspective of Mary within the Bible. And it is a book that is also free, or you can throw some money our way when you pick it up. You can also get at patreon.com, /Neofeud. You can support us here at the Silver Spook Cooperative in doing this work, anti-colonial, anti-capitalist work as an indigenous cooperative here in the illegally occupied United States. Speaking of your tracts of land, illegally occupied U.S. forced colony of Hawaii. You can help us to liberate ourselves, like the Kanaki in New Caledonia, our relatives in the southern parts of our Pacific Ocean here. Help us to do that, and also you can help support the completion of Neofeud 2. I am very close to being done. I'm very, very close to being done. I was working on it last night on some of the final scenes, and also doing other global geopolitical educational events like this. And of course, you can also get access to the Silver Spook Discord and the Silver Spook University, which is Silver Spook University is over 1,000 hours of all the content, video, and text I have created, categorized according to topic, and you get that when you become a Silver Spook Patreon of any level. Of course, you can also follow Silver Spook at Octodon.social, Silver Spook at Mastodon.social, and of course, you can also follow Silver Spook on Twitter at the Silver Spook Guy, and Silver Spook Games minus the Ian Silver for the games related stuff. You can also follow Terminus C. Terminus C is the Terminus Cyberstar account, which is a cyberpunk RPG that I am the content director and lead writer of. And of course, you can also follow Holly. Holly at the Tech Curry is is Septum Ring Green Hair and Tattoos posts about free watermelon, free Hawaii, and more. Encourages mask wearing, queer, married to myself, parent of 2. And don't forget that, so follow Holly. And thank you all the people on this list right over there. Without your support, it is very difficult for us to keep on doing this work. So thank you so much for your ongoing support of our work here. And until next time, don't faint securing that corset. Don't make it too tight, even for the fashions. I know it's fashionable, but you don't want to accidentally die from asphyxiation. And have a good time. And we'll see you next time.